Over the weekend, I participated in my first ever real-life board game tournament. In this video, I'm going to share how I did and my experience with it. This was a 4-day event held up in Sydney. For those of you who don't know, I'm from Melbourne, Australia, so it's like a 1.5-hour flight to get there. And I flew up alone for this event, leaving my dog and my wife at home. Basically, the format of the event is there are 12 different sort of mini tournaments. And at the end of those 12 tournaments, the top 4 players overall get to compete at a final table where the cash prize is held behind. But all the games were held in different time slots. So, for example, on the Friday, there was Terraforming Mars and Brass Birmingham. You could compete in one of those two. I chose to compete in Terraforming Mars. And yeah, I competed in all the games in yellow. Sunday night was between Splendor and Heat. I had no interest in playing either of those games, so I chose to just go into the city and look around a bit. And the way that points were allocated, in order to make the final table, you had to win at least one of these tournaments. So on the Friday, first game was Terraforming Mars. It was with preludes, it was with drafting. These were a mix of 3 and 4 player games because there were 10 participants. So there were 2 tables of 3, 1 table of 4. Each player got to play 3 games, and then the top 4 performers out of those 3 games would compete at a final 4-player table. So the first 2 games, I don't think anything really exciting happened. I managed to get first in both of them. First game was a 3-player, second game was a 4-player. Game 3 was incredibly rough. Game 3 in my opening hand, so I picked Saturn Systems. Then with the preludes, I had IO Research, so I started with a Jovian tag and a Science tag. And in my opening hand, I had AI Central and Solar Wind Power. So AI Central, obviously a pretty impactful card. Less so in 4-player games, but still alright, yeah. I had 2 science ready to go, I just needed a 3rd one. I had the power ready to go, and you can probably guess what happened. I found no other science tags for the first 5 generations. First move of the game, even, I played Convoy from Europa to put a water tile over the draw 2 cards, so I drew 3 extra cards, nothing. First, 3 generation drafts, nothing. And it was even worse than that, because all the other players were terraforming a ton. By generation 2, there were 5 oceans down. One of the players played algae, so most of the oceans were done already, and then the plants were getting done. Generation 3, a different player played kelp farming, so just had no hope that game. I managed to just sneak into 3rd place. Now that means I just barely finished in the top 4, so I made the final table, and there I finished 2nd in that game. Nowhere near as good as the first, but a 2nd's still pretty important for tiebreakers, so I wasn't too unhappy with the result. The final game was quite funny. The winner was an Ecoline player who got barely scathed with any space events. But the thing that helped me sneak into 2nd place was there was a massive fight for the minor award going on between players 3 and 4, to the point where player 3 played escarpment on player 4 in the last generation just to take the steel production away and win minor. Player 3 finished on 37 unspent minerals or something ridiculous like that, and I beat them out by 1 point at the end of the game. So if they'd spent some more of their minerals, they would have easily overtaken me. I think 1st place was about 10 points ahead of everyone else. So overall, pretty happy with how Terraforming Mars went. Saturday morning was Cascadia. This was probably the game that I was least confident. Obviously can't play it on Board Game Arena, so I've had the least practice out of all the games. But it started off decently. Games 1 and 2 I got 2nd and 2nd. These were with randomized animals. And yeah, again, a mix of 4 and 3-player games. So game 1 and 2, I was focusing a lot on the animals and probably ignoring my terrain a bit too much. So I think both games I finished with the highest animal scores. But yeah, when it came to terrain scoring, I fell a little bit behind 1st place. Game 3, I definitely focused a lot more on the terrain, and that worked out really well. I can see I got 1st there. We had 4 games of this because Cascadia is a bit of a quicker game compared to Terraforming Mars. So 4th game did not go well at all. I'm not going to make excuses. Everyone was pretty tired, but I misplayed my animals really badly. I left a lone bear by itself. I cut it off so it couldn't have a friend, which means it scored 0. I just had a hawk that didn't score. I just sort of ran out of time to do everything I wanted to do. My board was not a pretty board. I finished with 94, I think, which was the lowest out of my 4 games. So I got 3rd out of 4 in that, which means I missed out on the final table, which was a 3-player table. I finished 4th overall out of 7 people. But I wasn't too concerned because, yeah, like I said, Cascadia wasn't the game that I was most confident in, and I'm just kind of glad I could hold my own in it. Saturday night was Azul, and this was probably... obviously Ark Nova was the game that I was most confident in. Azul was probably the game that I was 2nd most confident in, even though these were 3 and 4-player games, which has a lot more variance compared to 2-player games. And there were a lot of people for Azul. There were 14 players, which means there were 2 3-player games, 2 4-player games running. First game wasn't too memorable. It's a 3-player game. Just focused on my top rows, got column, 2 rows, pretty standard first place. Second game, I thought I was doing really well as well. I was quite confident. But it's one of those differences between playing online and playing over the board. Like the player diagonal to me, I couldn't exactly see their board, so I didn't notice at the time that in the final round they got the black color as well. So I thought I was comfortably leading by like 5 or 6, but then when final scoring came around, they got color and they won by 4 points. But still, second place is fine. Third game was back to a 3-player game, which I got first in again. And at the end of game 3, I was leading the standings. So the way the standings work are you get 8 points for a first place, 5 points for a second place, 2 points for a third place. But there's slight differences if it's a 4-player game or not. If it's a 4-player game, you get 3 points for a third place and 1 point for a fourth place. So at the end of game 3, I was leading the standings. I think the only way I could have been knocked out was going into a 4-player game and getting last, which is, of course, exactly what happened. I was pretty tilted on Saturday night. The player before me had done really well in previous games. Like, I knew they were a really good player at everything. But they were policing me very heavily, which is kind of what you're meant to do with the player after you. You don't want to give them all the free stuff. You want to police what they get. The problem was I was getting policed very heavily, but I wasn't really policing the player after me. They weren't really policing the player after them. So I was sort of getting blocked compared to no one else getting blocked, essentially. I was doing a little bit of blocking. The final scores of that table were 73, 72, 71, 70. I finished on 70 and got last. If I'd got 1 point more, I would have finished in third, still finished first overall in the final standings. If I was in a 3-player game and I got third, I still would have made the final table just because of the extra point you get for coming last, but for not coming fourth. So there's so many tiny things that could have gone differently. And yeah, overall I finished 6th. I missed out on the final table. I was very upset because this was my second best chance at getting a first place, which I hadn't got yet. And you know, if you don't get a first place, you can't make the final table at all. But Sunday morning came Wingspan. This format was a little bit different. We actually had 18 players in it. So there were 6 tables of 3 players. There was no final table for Wingspan. It was just everyone gets to play 4 games, and whoever is the highest in standing wins the Wingspan tournament. I mean, I started out really well. Game 1 and 2 were firsts. Game 2 was a pretty close game. It was a very high scoring game. One of the players was feeding everyone food, so I finished on first with like 102. Second place was 98. Game 3 was a bit more interesting. For 2 reasons, actually. It was quite a funny game. I had a sort of wetlands engine going with 3 tuck a card, then lay an egg on it. I had 3 of those birds just first up in the wetlands, it's okay. It's not really the best strategy to go for. I didn't really have much else. The thing is, it starts off really efficient. You're getting like 6 points per action, but then the fun stops when you run out of egg space. I didn't really have a good way of getting food, which meant I was just stuck drawing cards for a while, getting like 3 points per action. I eventually found a bird that feeds everyone, and I could put that in the wetlands and start getting some food to play other birds. But it wasn't enough. It was just, I think I finished with 84 points, which was just enough for second place. And it was funny for a second reason, because the player to the left of me, I heard that they normally play this sort of co-op variant with their family. They were just playing with their deck of with their hand of cards just face up on the table. So I was looking over just trying to see how they were doing in their goals, what nests they had, and all their cards in their hand were just sitting there face up, and I was like, what the hell is going on here? So I was trying not to look at them, but it was just a very bizarre experience. After the end of game 3, there were 4 players that had 2 first places and a second place, so I was sort of tied in the top 4. Going into the last game, I was also up against someone else that was on 2 wins and a second. I guess now I should talk about how the tiebreaker is determined. Basically, the tiebreaker, if you're even with someone on points, like say you both have 3 wins and a second place, the tiebreaker is your score divided by total table score. For example, if you score 100 points in Wingspan and opponent 1 gets 60 and opponent 2 gets 40, then the total table score is 200. If you get 100 out of that 200, then you've made up 50% of the table score. Has a couple of issues. So, I mean, scoring high is one way to say that, yeah, you've done well at a game. Not that it's relevant in every game. It's a little bit misleading, but I think it has the opposite of the intended effect, which is that if you play weaker players, you will have a better percentage of table score because your opponents are not going to score as high. So game 4, I did have an incredibly lucky start. I started with the Fish Crow, which I was happy with. I forgot to mention, the format of the Wingspan game was the powerful birds were enabled, but you couldn't play them in the first round. So I started with the Fish Crow. After the first cards action, I drew into the Common Raven. So I was setting that ready to go for round 2. Start of round 2, play the Common Raven. Now every time I lay eggs, I'm producing an egg and 3 food. It was just absolutely ridiculous. Those cards are so broken. So I won the third game. I got 3 firsts and a second, and because of stupid damn tiebreakers, I finished second overall. One of the other players also won their last game, so they finished with 3 firsts and a second. And at that point, I was like, what more can I do here? Like, the second is still useful for tiebreakers for getting to the final table, but by this point I still hadn't got a first yet, so I was pretty upset. Even though I was very surprised that I did that well in Wingspan. I was not expecting to get second out of 18 people. It was probably my second weakest game out of the 5 that I was participating in. Yeah, I was happy with the result, but also a bit frustrated that I didn't get the first. Final day was Ark Nova. This was on the Monday. This was definitely my time to shine. So the organizers set it up to play 2-player games, sort of divided the 8 people into 2 different brackets. You play everyone in your bracket once, then the top 2 players play at a final table. I did manage to win all 3 of my games, which was, yeah, not too unexpected. Don't think anything that exciting happened in them. The first game was actually reasonably close. My opponent doesn't play online, but they played it really well. I was impressed with some of the things they did. Games 2 and 3, I just had access to early projects, took 2 CP worker, took 2 size and snapping, just sort of ran away with the games very quickly from the project spam. And that means I did make the final table. This photo was taken moments before disaster. Disaster for Dennis, not for me. That's Dennis on the left. So Dennis is a very strong Ark Nova player on Board Game Arena. X-Swifty, around 600, 650-ish sort of rating. I knew it was going to be a tough game. Also, shout out to Dennis. He's got a YouTube channel, and he did interview me at this event. So I'll leave a link to that, and watch out for that video. I think he's also going to make a recap of the event himself. But yeah, taken moments before disaster for Dennis, because the hand I got at the final table was completely ridiculous. It was just, you could not play against it at all. The base project, one of the base projects was reptiles. In my starting hand, I had herpetologist and slowworm, so I had a round 1 project right away. Another one of the projects was birds. I started with Barred Owl Hut in my hand, which of course, the classic Barred Owl Hut draws into Penguin Pool, which draws into Ornithologist. I had the triple bird sponsor combo. Then I managed to find an ostrich and a secretary bird. I had 5 birds done by round 3. And then even after spending time doing those 2 projects, I still won the race to Habitat 5, which was open. Meanwhile, poor Dennis hadn't done any projects. I blocked him on 2 reptiles. And yeah, on top of all that, I managed to also get Explorer, Vet, Science Museum, Science Lab, which I didn't even find time to play. It was native lizards for like 7 appeal. It was ridiculous. And an eel on top of that. So the final score was roughly 120 to 70. But with these results, Ark Nova first, Wingspan and Terraforming Mars second, I managed to get the 3rd seed overall, which meant it was time for the final table. So final table was going to be one of these 12 games that everyone had played. Each player got 2 vetoes, with the first seed getting 3 vetoes, games that you don't want to play. This wasn't the order that things were vetoed in, but I made sure to get rid of Splendor and Ticket to Ride. I would have been completely annihilated at either of those games. Thankfully for me, other players got rid of Heat and Ra, which were the other 2 games I was kind of concerned about. Heat, I just really don't enjoy playing. Ra, I've never played before, but that was the same case for basically everyone there. And then the other vetoes were everything else except for Wingspan, Ark Nova, and Dune Imperium. I couldn't believe Ark Nova was not vetoed. It was just a random spinning wheel choice between Wingspan, Ark Nova, Dune Imperium. I would have been delighted with Ark Nova. I would have been pretty happy with Wingspan, but the random wheel chose Dune Imperium, which is a game, I know the rules, I have played it before, I own it in real life, but I'm so out of practice. I haven't played in it at least a year. So this was the final table. There was Chris. He won 3 tournaments overall. I think he won Brass Birmingham, Cascadia, and Wingspan. There was Terry, who won 2 tournaments. I think he won Ra, and I don't remember the other one actually. Dennis won Terraforming Mars, and I won Ark Nova. Dune Imperium was also getting played during the day on Monday. This final was on Monday night. So Terry had just played 3 or 4 games of Dune Imperium, whereas Chris, myself, and Dennis had been playing Ark Nova before on that day. So Terry was probably the favorite going in. I don't think any of the other three were that confident about Dune Imperium. The game is sort of a blur because my basic understanding of Dune Imperium strategy is get your third worker or third agent as soon as you can, and you're going to get the majority, well, you're going to get a large amount of your points from the alliances and the influence tracks. And I guess the third bit of strategy I know is that every point is super valuable. So that's what was guiding me throughout the whole game. There was a conflict in the first round which had a victory point, so I went pretty hard at it. I went way too hard at it. I finished with 10 swords to 6 was the second closest, so I mean, I started with a victory point, but I had basically no resources. And yeah, because I was revealing 2 daggers, I had basically no buying power either, so I couldn't really improve my deck too much. Just with the way the seating order went, Terry got his third agent first out of everyone in the second round. It was pretty nice going third, so I was able to get my third agent straight the round after Terry. I think roughly at the end of round 3, Terry managed to buy the Kwisatz Haderach, which is the 8 cost card that's, I think, generally agreed to be pretty overpowered. And throughout the game, I just knew I was playing badly. I could just see I was making mistakes, but I didn't know what to do to fix it. Twice during the game, I had to reveal my cards early because I know revealing early is not that bad tactically for some reasons, but I didn't reveal early for tactical reasons. I just did it because I misplayed my hand so badly that I just had nowhere else to place. So I did that twice. I was just taking like sort of slow moves to go up on the influence track. Like I went to fold space a few times to go up on the space and guild. I went to the single intrigue card space to go up on the Bene Gesserit track. I could just see everyone else around me getting a lot more resources, like a lot more water, a lot more spice, and improving their decks so much more than I was. My deck was terrible. Then it came to round 7. Most players were on 4, 5, or 6 points. I was sitting on 5 points. Conflict gets revealed. It's a 2 victory point conflict. I was first player, which was very nice. And I only made the sequence of optimal moves because I didn't draw the right cards that I wanted. So I had my 6 spice ready to go to Highlander, but I didn't draw a card to let me go to Highlander. So I had to start the round by going to the blue spot where you draw 3 cards, which, I mean, I had no intention of doing that, but I was kind of forced into it, so that worked out really well for me. I was Ilban, so I went there with my Signet Ring to get another Solari. That meant I had 2 Solari, which come my second turn, I was amazed no one took the Mentat. So second turn, I could go to the Mentat spot, draw 2 more cards. And from that point forward, I could see a small, tiny path to a victory. So with the Mentat, I had 2 final moves left. One of them was going to be going to Highlander, which no one still had spice to sort of go there before me, which also got me an alliance with the Spacing Guild, so that was 1 extra point to get from 5 to 6. My other last move was going to be going to just get a single intrigue card to get an alliance with the Bene Gesserit, so that was from 5 to 7. Because I'd drawn so many cards, I actually had enough money to buy a Spice Mask Flow, so that got me to 8. And then if I won the conflict, I was going to be on 10 points. And I was a bit shocked going through the round because Chris was going pretty hard on the conflict, had 6 troops in there at the end. Terry had about 10 troops banked up, but chose not to participate because he was very convinced that there was going to be another round after this. So he was gunning for the next conflict. But after going to Highlander, I had 6 troops in there myself, and when the daggers were revealed, I had my 2 starting daggers, which was +2, and I had Stilgar, which gave me +3 daggers, so I finished on 17 strength, and Chris managed to reveal 4 daggers, and he finished on 16 strength. I won the final conflict, and I won the game by 1 point in the end. Chris had an amazing last turn as well. He managed to play Liet Kynes and get, I don't know, something stupid like 10 buy power along with all the other cards, so he had 18 buy power, could buy 2 Spice Moss Flows, and that also catapulted him from 5 points to 8 points, and then if he won the conflict, he was winning the game, so it really came down to that. I just barely managed to win the last conflict by 1 sword. And that's me, the National Board Game Champion of Australia. Really couldn't believe it at the time, because halfway through that Dune Imperium game, I was very checked out. I thought for sure I was playing for second at best. And I also only got there because the other players were sort of blocking each other. I think everyone thought I was definitely not a threat that game because I had misplayed it so badly. Just with revealing early twice, and I think everyone knew my deck was clearly the worst out of everyone. So while the other players were fighting for like the Fremen alliance, I managed to just get 2 alliances very uncontested, and it was the perfect amount of points to win. So that was the event. It was a ton of fun to go to. Yeah, my first experience going to a real life board game tournament. And it was so nice meeting a ton of people that shared very similar interests. So thanks to Liam at Braided Entertainment for organizing it. Thanks to all the other players for a fantastic event. And thanks all of you for watching. I have no idea when the next sort of tournament like this will be going on in Australia, but I will definitely be participating in it. So until then, see you guys later.